Fighting Blindness Canada's Young Leaders program is a career-oriented initiative that provides young people living with vision loss in Canada with the tools they need to develop their skills and pursue rewarding careers. The session you are about to watch is a recording. To learn more about our upcoming programs, please visit us online at fightingblindness.ca/youngleaders. The Young Leaders program is proudly supported by RBC Future Launch, Rhythm Pharmaceuticals, and Janssen. We hope that you enjoyed this session and share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Carmen Papalia. Carmen is a non-visual social practice artist living here in Vancouver. Carmen has done his bachelor's in arts from Simon Fraser University and master's in fine arts from Portland State University. Carmen's revolutionary work has been featured in a lot of institutions, including was the museum? Sorry, I forgot.
My last most current show I had was in Switzerland at the Migros Museum.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work in Canada.
Yeah, and you had your work featured in Vancouver Art Gallery as well.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And in 2020, Carmen was a recipient of one of the 25 recipient of the SOBI Art Award as well. So welcome, Carmen. Thank you for joining us. I would let you describe yourself quickly before we get to the questions.
Yeah, so in terms of visual description, I'm a 42-year-old man with olive skin. I have black hair, a short beard. I'm wearing a fedora hat with a short brim that's upturned. It's brown. It's a feather on the side. I'm wearing a short sleeve button shirt that's brown that kind of has like a watery wash to it. On top of that is a washed out jean jacket. I have a pin on it from the Exploratorium in San Francisco. I have cool green shoes on and a brown pants. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with the questions. So I would start with Carmen. You have a very interesting description of your profession.
Yeah.
You identify yourself as a non-visual artist. Can you describe to all of us what it means to you and why you choose to describe yourself that way?
Yeah, so I started making art. I would draw and I guess I was creative growing up, but in my early 20s, I started using a cane. And at that time, I started doing, I didn't call them art projects at the time or performances, although that's how I think of them now. But a lot of them were addressing, how my position changes after adopting a white cane. What is the response from my community, the people around me? How does that change my relationships? And so at that time, that was before I went into grad school. But when I went to grad school, I really started studying art for the first time. It's a very visual field. And I was thinking about what is my place in relation to this long visual history? And I was thinking, my perspective is more of that of a non-visual artist. I could speak to non-visual experience and what I could, I have what I could gather through my non-visual senses. And that's been part of my artistic exploration is non-visual wayfinding and also cross-sensory translation. And institutional critique, but all around this idea of embracing the non-visual senses and as a way of being in the world. So, and I felt like the reason that I need to distinguish that I was non-visual was because I was participating in a very visual practice, art practice, and field. And so I just really wanted to speak to what my position was and like communicate that and signal that in some ways. And after I started calling myself a non-visual artist, other people started identifying me that way too. And some other people adopted that term themselves. So it just made me feel like I had more and more space to be understood on my terms. And that's kind of where my practice started.
That's amazing. Thank you. All right. So I can say this with confidence that almost all of us in this room have had our own with sight loss journey as well. So I was wondering, can you share your sight loss journey and how that impacted you both personally and professionally?
Yeah. So like I grew up with like vision. Like I grew up seeing things. I think it was, yeah, like I think it was like my early 20s when I adopted a white cane, when I wasn't able to read printed text anymore. I was kind of bumping into things, probably needed some kind of way of signaling that I was crossing the street. People were worried about my safety. I was being encouraged by my friends and family to pick up a white cane, and yeah, I did, and it was something that I guess it was helpful for me to use, but I noticed that once I had adopted a cane, it was like this lightning rod for conversation, but some conversations I didn't want to have with people that would just like, I remember telling my girlfriend at the time that like, well, she told me that there's a lot more people looking at us now. And when I was using my cane, and I was like, oh, okay. And I felt bad about that at first, but then later on, I kind of started thinking about, okay, well, I have like this audience, like I have these people who are watching me, like, what do I want to tell them? And I guess that was the first thing where I was like, okay, can I make these interactions with people like more productive? Maybe can I help them or go in a direction that works for me, instead of like being, say, running late for an event and then someone asks me like my life story in 5 minutes, like can you and which is really common. And I also thought that like it was the cane for me too, was this invitation for people to like just touch me and like bring me, like help me cross the street, even if I didn't need the help. And so I think I was in need of more ways to advocate for myself, and that's where when I really developed my art practice. But I guess when I started identifying as a non-visual artist, I started like saying things like, oh, I don't use vision. Oh, that's not my primary way. I'm kind of relating to my environment and others in different terms. And I just thought of it as a way to kind of like speak to, like ocular centrism, or a culture that privileges the visual sense over all other senses. And I think in certain ways with my art practice, I've tried to make opportunities for us to have, for myself first, and then for others to have opportunities to, develop their non-visual senses, to practice using their non-visual senses, to know or learn what they can discover through their non-visual senses. So it became something that, like I often say, like I never really had a grieving process for my vision loss, because I kind of just shifted the focus or value, I guess, from the visual to the non-visual. And maybe it was like a coping mechanism in some way, but it was one that I could really like get behind. Even with the white cane, for me, it was always an uncomfortable signifier. I've never really used a cane that was just standard issue white and red. I've always like modified my canes. I'm using one today that it's a graphite cane that I peeled all the white and red tape off of. And so it's black, and it has these silver parts where the segments go together, and it has a wooden handle. So yeah, I've always kind of used different, and people get the idea. Like I'm still using it as a to detect obstacles, but I have less people. I was almost able to like turn the volume down on that. Hey, I'm blind and I need help, you know, which is, you know, the cane is, it's white and red. So people who are sighted can see it, you know, and identify you as someone who's blind. And so I just wanted to kind of disrupt that a bit. And yeah, and I've been doing various things to help in that process over the years.
No, that's fantastic. That's really inspiring. Thank you. So I wanna take you back to sort of your childhood. So you mentioned that you were like your sight loss happened later in your life. So my next question is what growing up, what were your like career aspiration? Did you wanted to become an artist before you lost your sight, and like how did your sight loss like modified or changed your career path?
Yeah, so out of like early in high school, I knew I wanted to be an animator, and I did a lot of like I actually went into a program, a 2-year character animation program after high school, and I drew like I was like really into character animation, like 2D, so really like drawing on a light table, and you know, the style of my drawings were very detailed, like ink drawings usually, if I was like just kind of illustrating stuff. And so I love this experience of like being kind of immersed in the world that you're making through a drawing. And then, you know, I kind of just was thinking about what my trajectory would be after this animation school. Like, you know, most people after graduating, they maybe move to, at that time in Vancouver, we didn't have really that many animation studios. So people were moving to like Seattle and California and stuff. And I was like, how many years am I going to be able to be an animator? Like, I don't know. And I don't know. I like applied to Emily Carr and tried to get into art school at that time, and I didn't get in. And then I applied to SFU, and they said, "Oh, you can study English here." And so I did an English degree, and I studied poetry, and I started writing poems about my walking routes and just kind of the obstacles and also just the landmarks that I noticed on my walks. And that was kind of the first like creative inquiry. I think my first like creative process around my like unique way of like being in the world, and then that kind of led me back to art in grad school, where I was just like kind of where everything really opened up for me, and I learned like in 2010 when I started my grad program is when I learned about disability art. Like it was not as big of a category back then or thing. I didn't really know that. I didn't know who else was out there. I mean, at the time, I remember like just putting maybe disability in art in whatever search engine was popular back then, and finding an academic journal named like Disability Studies Quarterly. So it's like, you know, and through this academic journal, I found like, oh, there's poets who are writing about their experience of disability, and there's artists and there's academics, and I'm like, I just really need to reach out and be part of some kind of discourse that you know wasn't exactly happening where I was. So yeah, that was kind of the beginning of it for me, and yeah, through getting into art in grad school and you know, doing work with museums and specifically around a lot of my work is about my own accessibility around the ways that like I navigate the world. It just took my advocacy to new places, and I think I kind of learned, well, I mean, way back, you know, I think I've learned how to be an advocate, you know, when I was a kid, because I spent a lot of time in hospital since I was a kid because of my blood condition, and my pain condition. But yeah, when I got into grad school, it was like this other thing where I thought like, you know, how could again, what message do I want to deliver to people, and what message is worth spending my time on exploring.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. So you did mention that your undergrad or bachelor's was not very art related. So I was wondering. So before you became a full-time artist, what were the other jobs or roles that you have held, and how did those help you in your growth as a full-time artist?
Okay, well, my first job out of high school was I worked at a gas station. And I don't know if that prepared me to be an artist, although I would draw a lot while I was on shift and like there was nothing else to do. So like maybe it was art that got me through that job. But other than that, like after animation school, I actually put like this curriculum together to teach like character animation to like grade schoolers. So I kind of pitched it to a few different schools here in Vancouver, and I taught after school programs for I think it was like from grade 2 to 7, but all around character animation. And so yeah, that was just like maybe the first experience I got of like putting something together, proposing it and pitching it, and then people like actually like like responding and wanting me to do something. And that's kind of what it's still like I do as an artist now. It's like I have this wild idea for something, and then you kind of have to get interest and buy-in, and then so, sometimes it happens. So yeah, I guess for me, like those animations classes that I taught, I still was telling, I think my employers, like these schools, that like I had vision loss. I think that was relevant to just me being able to like manage like a bunch of kids after school. Sometimes there were, like the kid that would take my hat and run away. What do you do? But yeah, I think after that, like, I mean, I didn't know. I had some like customer service jobs before, but other than that, like, I think it went from like doing those animation after school programs to like kind of being involved in I mean, a big experience that set me up for being an artist, I think, is I published this magazine in my undergrad with a few friends, including my friend Oven here, who's here today. And it was just like this magazine we put out, like, to publish ourselves and our friends and our mentors. And we put a few, like 3 magazines issues out a year, and then we would have like events and poetry readings and stuff. And I think those skills that like around like coordinating and putting events together, and like, yeah, just like doing, proposing something and then having it happen, or organizing it so it could happen, was like really good experience for me becoming an artist.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I always say to people that careers are not a straight line. There are always detours, and then you eventually get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
All right. So I think a lot of people would echo with what I'm going to ask next. Is so during your career, obviously you had multiple different types of employers. You work with all kinds of people. So how did you made sure that you got the accommodations that you needed, and what advice would you give to people who will be going into employment in terms of like accessibility and accommodations?
I mean, it's a hard question, because like I still feel like there are like it's I work with a lot of museums, and also like I do work for the arts councils. Like I do a lot of consulting work for accessibility besides my art practice. But yeah, like people know me as someone with multiple disabilities, because that's how I identify myself in the context of my art practice, and my artwork is about my access, and also like it's and my perspective and philosophy on accessibility too, which is very different than like a regular sort of standard compliance-based model for accessibility, where you're given what you these maybe choice of like 1 to 3 different accommodations that are meant for, a typical presentation of an impairment. I really appreciate more like, creative and approaches to accessibility.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess like for me, I always thought because my art and accessibility and creativity were always mixed, like that I would propose, and my topic is expansive approaches to accessibility. I could like propose the things that might not be on an accommodation checklist, because like even going to Simon Fraser University, like I had such trouble with like the Disability Resource Center. It was like, okay, I know you provide X, Y, and Z, but I actually need, this other thing. Can you give me money to like, so hire my friend to read to me because I'm getting my books like 3 weeks, month after the course starts. And sometimes that and sometimes that they would be able to accommodate, but it was such a struggle, like to get the basics and to get accessibility on my own terms.
Yeah.
And so when I started becoming an artist, like I have to, I'm in the practice of sending the institutions I'm working with an access rider. So like, what are the things that I need if I'm going to this place and working here, especially because it's in different cities. I need certain things, and with my visual condition, but also like more critically around my blood condition, which I have sickle cell anemia. So I have like pretty intense pain and acute episodes that can land me in hospital, and they're very much like an emergency. They lead to like complications, damage to my bones and organs. So, that for that condition alone, like I have to ask for, like, I need an emergency contact person. I need someone with a car that can get me somewhere that I need to be, like, if I need to go to the hospital, I have to like scout, have the institution or my host scout where like the hospital is, and in relation to where I'm staying. And like, so it's not like, brutally far away. And like with all my planning and advocacy and like, whatever I can include on an access rider, there are still failures. Like it's really never going to be perfect. And I think it's just about the practice of doing it and then saying, hey, like these people did this for me. Like, so that's what I'd like to happen here, and like to build on that, or, hey, my friend, I heard that they got this, and they're a disabled artist, with these conditions. I think that could be helpful for me too. And I think like if I had any advice for anyone, it was like, don't think of the accommodation checklist as what you're as like what the thing that we're tied to. Like that's not the only option, because like accessibility, if an institution, employer, whatever is just like relying on compliance, then they're doing the bare minimum to like be able to like employ you legally, without getting sued or infringing on human rights. So I guess, yeah, just like I think would ask for things that you think like, so, for my pain condition, like sometimes I need more comfortable seat. Sometimes I need a heated seat. I just learned this too, like, with the Arts Council, I can ask for accommodations for during my flights, and it really makes a difference if I have some leg room. So, yes, I will have a premium economy seat. But yeah, I never knew to ask for that before, and I never knew, and you could ask for that. But I would say like we set the standards. Our community does. Our diverse community sets the new standards, and just through like challenging existing policies. So and I guess that would be my recommendation, is to always question and push.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I relate to those experiences so much that I was just picturing myself suffering through all those discussions. I mean, what I tell people is never say this is what we offer. Instead, say what do you need.
Right.
And that's how accessibility, in my opinion, should be customizable to and each individual's needs, and that's how it should be. All right, I have one more quick question before I open the floor for participants to ask. So, for this question, I'm gonna like open the closet and wanna have you share all the skeletons that you have in there. So you've been in the art world for a while.
Yeah.
And you obviously are a non-visual artist with a vision impairment and a blood condition as well. So what challenges have you encountered in the art world as you navigated your way around, and how did you like work around them or challenge the status quo of the arts being visual?
I mean, yeah, it's hard because like with art institutions and museums, like there's, like some of them are not places where even like employees like who work there feel comfortable identifying around their disability experience. So first, like I don't know who my people are when I go into these places. Then, some of them don't really have a developed access program or anything. So it's like you're often having to like scaffold for yourself and do the additional labor of like access provision, of advocacy, like this, this work, this extra work that it takes for you to just be able to show up and do your job. So I feel like, and that's across the board. Like there's very few disability run galleries, and definitely no museums out there that are completely disability led. But it is a treat when I am invited by those places where there is someone who shares the same worldview, or like maybe alignment in regards to politics or understandings around like disability culture. Like I say that I subscribe to like a disability culture worldview. And so that's something I used to explain to people that might not be familiar with, like, what is that? Well, okay, I actually embrace my disability experience as like, this is who I am. And like I feel like, what I've asked institutions, I think I said this after my show at the Vancouver Art Gallery, but it was last year, but it was like, oh, it's easy to put up an exhibition, but it's hard to host disabled artists. It's harder for an institution to host well. And it's strange because like, that shouldn't be difficult because like they work with a lot of people who have the privileges that all the others don't. Yeah, I really think that, when I do run into barriers though, I just keep going higher up the chain to the director usually.
Yes.
And just having frank conversation with the directors.
Yep.
And sometimes that leads to me getting like that unpaid time compensated. I'll literally ask for, my fee to be adjusted because of
Yes.
that, yeah, I can't take, and I know a lot of our other artists who haven't had those opportunities, or maybe they just don't even feel comfortable advocating for themselves, and they're not getting that. And so I do think there needs to be a culture shift within the sector too, to lead to, some changes where that burden wouldn't be on us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, self-advocacy is really, really important, but we don't want to do every day and night of the of our lives. All right, I have a long list of questions, but we have a very good audience here, which have been very patient to hear my questions. So I'm gonna open the floor. So I'll open the floor for the in-person audience first, and have questions here, and then we can shift to online. I will not be able to see everyone, so please just speak out if you have a question. It's absolutely fine.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. My name is Pranit Singh, and I am a graphic design student in my final year for the Bachelor's of Graphic Design. And you had talked quite a bit about different practices that you had done throughout your artistic journey. You mentioned briefly about wayfinding as well too.
Yeah.
And because wayfinding and user experience is a big part of graphic design. So I was personally interested in those things, but we get to barely touch those things in the bachelor's degree. So I wanted to maybe hear from like a couple pointers from you about how to make graphic design or like user interfaces and wayfinding more accessible for the visually impaired.
I feel like you just have to really connect with those users and like get their, like explore their user journey and it's like design from, I mean, really like you have to center those people who have that experience. And the work that I do around wayfinding is very strange in comparison. I replace my cane with different things and then try to navigate the city. So one being a marching band. So instead of a cane, I'll use a marching band to get to the city. Or I've made, I used a megaphone and I was just like saying, I wasn't using my cane, but I was saying, I'm non-visual, I can't see you, I hope you can see me, I hope I don't bump into you, I need help crossing the street. And just doing this process of putting myself out there and seeing what the response would be. And for me, like it is, I don't know, like, I mean, I don't know how that can inform design necessarily, but I think there are, yeah, like, I think we just have to be using, public spaces in like diverse ways in order to realize what the possibilities are. Yeah, and I guess I'll say too that like vision is so like I think it's we just understand it as this norm. I mean, I was listening to another session and they were talking about like, oh, this person could see again like normal. And I was just like, okay, well, like their normal was not seeing until they got the treatment, you know?
What's normal?
Yeah. And so I would say that like I would just shift the paradigm of what like what sense are you designing for? It might be the visual sense, and you're trying to accommodate the non-visual experience through a visual art practice, which is like maybe my suggestion would be like shift like like maybe design for tactility, or design for like orientation through listening. Yeah, because I do like challenging what the norm is, and even this idea of like we're fighting blindness, right? Like I want to fight blindness too, but in a different way. I want to fight this perception that like I don't use the word blind to describe myself actually, because when I was writing poetry at Simon Fraser University, I was writing this poem and I was like, oh, synonyms for the word blind, what are they? Oh, well, like, unaware, all these things that I would not want to be, right? And I think they make sense in the context of a visually dominant society. So yeah, I want to fight this perception that a non-visual experience is not as wonderful as a visual experience. Yeah.
Could I just, maybe you could describe the non-visual tours that you do of some of the art galleries, because I think that also is a really interesting idea of wayfinding. Can you describe what that is?
Okay, so some of you might be familiar with like just like a visually described museum tour. So like what I do is I give people like sighted people and people who are blind or visually impaired the opportunity to go on a one-on-one museum tour where they are being described to by a guide, but this guide is really doing subjective description based on what catches their eye. So it's not necessarily just the art, although it is most of the time. It's also the architecture. It's how the layout of the space, even describing other people in the gallery. And I often recruit my friends to lead these tours, and people that I meet in the cities that I'm doing the work in too. So and everybody brings their own expertise to those descriptions. And I've had museum directors that have worked at institutions for like over 20 years say, oh, I've walked through this place numerous times and didn't notice this, and it was because they removed that reliance on the visual sense. you know, and kind of got to know the space in new terms.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm gonna quickly shift. We have obviously participant joined online. So if anyone virtually, do you have any questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
Sure. It's Alicia. I'll ask a question because I don't know if we have anyone online who has any questions right now. But Carmen, for someone who is an aspiring artist, cough myself, who wants to delve into a career in the arts and culture, more specifically theater, what kind of advice would you have for them, aka me?
I mean, there is a lot going on in theater in terms of like accessibility. And like, I really think like this whole space of us participating in the arts, like there's no like easy path to it. Like there's maybe no path to it. Like we have to make that. And so I would say like really lean into what you're interested in and then share that with people because they need people like you who are enthusiastic about working in those fields to lead the conversation. And if they're not letting you lead the conversation about accessibility or your participation in that space, then you know maybe I think they're going to be wasting your time, or even like it's going to be a difficult and challenging experience.
For sure.
So yeah, I just think do what you love doing because you love it, and then share it with people, and know that this space, like there's no like conventions are for accessibility in the arts. Like we're kind of making them right now, and it's kind of exciting because the arts have been, especially disability arts, like I know like people who are redefining what accessibility means, and they're artists, and it's happening in the art space, which is like it's not happening in closed doors, in government. They are like 20 years behind or more. They are taking our lead. And I think that as much as we can do in the arts, an experimental like space like the arts that is open to like creative proposals and disruption too, like let's just like undo the things that we and undermine the harmful systems, right? With our presence. And I want to be the wrench in the gears sometimes, especially if that institution, like we, you know, I want the museum, those spaces, the theater, to be a place that reflects my experience, or where I can go to see my experiences reflected back at me. And just like where, you know, if we can't participate in those spaces, like where do we go to like tell our stories, to connect with others and understand what disability culture is? And I think that's really important, is to like hold on to the truth of disability experience, because that is I think in so many ways in our culture, through art as well as just like dominant culture and being in a non-disabled or ableist even space, you know, our experiences are invalidated, and they're erased too. Yeah, I actually love the fact that I'm a non-visual artist and that I learned through my non-visual senses. And sorry, I did a fidget. I just
No, thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We are running out of time, but I guess we have time for one quick question. Probably, I don't think that there's any question online, so probably I wanna ask one quick. Yeah.
Because you mentioned like what you do, but I guess, and like even before how you led up to it, I guess my main question is like, since we've emphasized it's a very visually dominant field and whatnot, and a lot of visual emphasis on everything, how did you advocate for yourself to even be not necessarily accepted in the sense of acceptance, but like be heard and actually get out there?
I mean, it was a curator that like came to me, like and the only disabled curator that I knew at the time, and that was she kind of came to meet me because she heard that there was a person who was blind, who was doing this grad program in Portland and was learning about social practice. And she's like, oh, I'm curious, like what is this person doing? And she just started showing my work. And I think I guess like for me, like it was really about like being like connecting with my peers and colleagues, other people who are disabled. Not necessarily, you know, I found one of my, you know, mentors, and some of my closest friends through this curator too, because I was being put in shows with other disabled artists, and I'll say, like, I have a lot of you know, art world access, but there's, I mean, disability art is way smaller than, you know, the art world in general.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is a very particular conversation I'm part of, and sometimes it bleeds out into these other spaces, but it really has been like just getting inspired by and the work of my peers, and really knowing that, like, I mean, they set the groundwork for my work to happen. And you know, I'll just share one short story. My mentor, Georgina Klee, she's a blind author, used to teach at UC Berkeley, and she writes on like museum experience and blindness. And you know, this curator I'm talking about, Amanda, she put us on a panel once, and it was the first time I met Georgina. She sat me right beside her. And after the event, Georgina asked me, she's like, so what kind of description do you like? And I was like, well, I like more creative description. And she's like, oh, well, then we're in the same camp. And that just like was my world opening up. Like, it was like this person who had dedicated their career to like exploring like what the value of non-visual experiences was, like talking to me, and like I was making work about that. And it's totally, yeah. And we're still, you know, we just did an event a couple of months ago where she came to Vancouver, and we got to touch objects from the Vancouver Art Gallery collection. So it's, yeah, it's just, I get so much well, not that I'm looking for validation from my peers, but I just feel like it affirms my own understandings of myself, and my own understandings of myself deepen through the work of my colleagues.
All right, thank you. So I would love to have this conversation going for forever, but we have ran out of time. I would like to thank Carmen. Thanks again for joining us and sharing your journey. It's been inspiring to all of us. I would also like to thank people who have joined virtually, wherever you are in the country. Thank you for joining us. And I also want to thank everyone here in person. This is again my first time in Vancouver, and I'm already in love with Vancouver. Although I've been only here for 10 hours.
One more thing, I brought a piece of art today. This is one of the first things that I made. And what I'm unfurling here is a white cane, but
the ceiling before it.
Incredible.
it's about 15 feet long. I would go on walks with this on Commercial Drive if you're familiar with Vancouver. Yeah, I call it, this work is called Long Cane. And it's been in a few exhibitions. This one was in London in an exhibition at the Wellcome Collection. But it was really me like feeling like the standard issue white cane was like maybe a cumbersome signifier. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
Yeah, you are actually revolutionizing the whole industry. This is amazing. Thank you. All right, thanks everybody. That's it for today. But we will have more events and stay tuned with FPC. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.